Hello and welcome to my cake kitchen. My name is Gladys and over here I make simple, informative tutorials to help you navigate cake decorating easily. And today we are trying to turn this cake into a very simple semi-naked ganache polished cake with floral decorations, and making this cake will involve a few decorative techniques, including how to cover the cake in ganache, some stenciling detail, tips to get a fine polished look to a cake like this, as well as how to decorate this cake with simple elements such as artificial flowers and present it on a fondant covered board. Now that seems like a lot to do, but if you're new to the cake decoration, the purpose of this video is to inform you, show you where to start, where to get to, so that you can get yourself some practical tips that will inform your confidence in your own time if you're undertaking some baking or decorating. So I hope in this tutorial, by the end of it, you will at least get to be able to cover a cake crumb coat it completely in layers of ganache until you receive a polished look to the cake. Perhaps on the side, in tandem, I'll show you some simple coloring techniques, because the coloring of the ganache that is going to be used to cover the cake will be derived as a slightly marbled look. I'll show you all of that, and then the hope is that we will present the cake, transfer it onto a fondant covered board with floral decorations and some simple decorative elements. I'll be talking you through all the stages of that, and I will also be talking you through some of the tools that will make this rather convenient for me. Naturally, I have gone ahead to layer the cake. This is a 6-layered vanilla sponge cake that has that has brown sugar, just because it's a salted caramel buttercream and salted caramel filling requested. And we have gone ahead and filled the cake, stacked it, doweled it to keep the layers together. It was slightly warm, and we have trimmed it. Now, if you're new to all those pre-decorative techniques that I have just spoken about, check on the channel, live tutorials, and some of the long form videos. I have covered a ton of tutorials taking you through the beginning phases of how to fill and layer a cake. And I think I have a beginner's basic series where I start from how to crumb coat a cake, the importance of crumb coating, leveling, and all the basics that will lead you to this point, so that at least you are empowered with the information to be able to do that. As well as the long form content, there is also live videos where I have taken a cake that looks like this through all the decorative phases, and we have finished off with a polished look. You'll be spoiled for choice, and there is no lack of information on the channel. So if you're new here, hello there and welcome. It is my hope that we'll get to this cake. I have organized some of the bits that will make for convenience. So because the tutorial is going to be task based, it's going to be difficult to kind of keep in the chat whilst also completing the task. So what we are going to do, because I want you to have a great experience, what we're going to do is the cake is going to be, the process of decorating the cake is going to take phases. We finish one phase, the cake chills, and then we come back. So in between, I'll get breaks and then I'll get to talk to you. But if you have any questions in the chat and you want to ask me, do leave it and I will make a point of stopping and answering your questions. I can't seem to see the chat right now, but over here, just to talk you through some of the tools that will get me through this task. We have a selection of offset spatulas here, and then we have a stainless steel scraper. Both of these, the scrapers and offset spatulas are sitting in a jar of warm water. The reason being, because we're doing ganache work. Ganache sets quickly. You'll find out very shortly. So having your tools warm, including knives and the blades warm, would aid spreading your ganache easily and will aid giving you a finer finish to your cake. Also over here, I have gone ahead and prepped my ganache. I guess there are ganache series on my channel already for you to check, and we'll come to the subject of ganache. Whatever I do here today can be replaced with buttercream techniques depending on what buttercream. But today I am working with the ganache. The cake that I am trying to decorate, I posted a sample photo of the same cake in my community post. So if you are in a rush to see what the final work is likely to look like, go back to the homepage community post and see there's a photo of a cake where I announced being on a live today. In fact, I could have been here sooner, but I had quite a lot of things to do today. But since I did promise I was going to be here, I did come back. So the ganache we are going to be working with has set slightly. The consistency is a little hard, so I'm going to move the cake out of the way and I'm going to show you what the ganache looks like. I can work with it this way, but it's going to make my life a little bit difficult. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the ganache in there for about 2 seconds or something, just so that it spreads a little more easily, and I'll be back. I want to be careful not to overmelt the ganache, because once the consistency is softer than I need it to be, we'll have more problems than I require it. So the first stage of the covering is obviously crumb coating. And if you don't know what crumb coating is the phase of decorating, which is part of the decorating process where buttercream or ganache is used to layer the cake quickly to hold in the crumbs. I'm looking behind me because I'm just trying to find something that will help me get some color. Look, I use color mill. I'm going to color the ganache slightly. You will see what I'm trying to do. I use color mill, but the problem with color mill is that it's oil based. So whilst it has advantages, when it's about to run out, it's difficult to get the color out of the of the bottle. So what I did was I just cut the bottle open, that's all. So we do all of that stuff here. So if you're in the chat and you have questions, just leave them there and I will do well to answer them. So what I've done is I have just gone ahead and then placed some color in there just to, and I'm not trying to cover it completely, as in color the entire ganache. I just wanted the color to be sparring in there. And I have a portion here which will come to use. So I'm going to go ahead quickly to crumb coat this cake. And over here, there is a little portion over here. And before I got to this stage, I have left the cake to chill completely. As in, I have left this cake to sit in the fridge to chill and set, which is why it is steady. It is a cake that is standing at a little over 9 inches tall, and this is a 5-inch cake. It is sitting on a 5-inch cake cake card, which will help with the process for me. So I'm going to go ahead and cover this in. Normally for the crumb coat, I could have gone ahead and covered it in a small layer of ganache and then come back. But I'm just taking my chance to cover it as much as possible over here. So what I'm doing is just spreading the ganache evenly around the cake. If you find that you're struggling with this, just do it in bits. I think naturally, because I've done this over and over again, it comes so easy for me to just breeze through it. But what you want to do is just spread bits of the ganache. If I was polishing this cake at this point in time, or aiming to polish it, I will probably cover it more. But because this is just a crumb coat, I have just gone ahead and and that's it. I have holes and gaps on it. I'm not overly concerned about that, because even if I chill the cake, when I come back, I will be able to cover it. But perhaps it's a good thing to cover it completely, because I chilled the cake before covering. You can see that even though there are crumbs on the surface, the crumb is not like showing through into the cake, which is an advantage for this process. So all I'm doing is scrape. If you're scraping and you're not confident, you don't have to do it in one go. You can do it in phases. So you can go maybe quarters, 1/4 round, stop, take the excess ganache off, and then start again where you stopped, and then keep going. A good way to work with the ganache is obviously to make sure that your scraper is warm. But I'm not overly concerned about that at this stage, simply because it's the crumb coat phase. But of course, when we come to the polishing and finishing stages, I will have to be careful about how it looks. And if you're still uncertain about the crumb coat, can you see that if you look closely, you can see spots of cake crumbs in there? That is essentially what we were looking to do, to trap those crumbs so that the outer coat of the cake will not have these crumbs showing through. So essentially, that is the crumb coat. A good tip for getting a polished looking cake is to ensure that your cake is covered in layers. So layer one, you apply the ganache or buttercream, leave it to set completely before you come and layer the cake with more ganache or buttercream. What that does for the cake is that it allows you time for the cake to set completely so that it doesn't sift through the next layers, which will guarantee you a more polished look to your cake. So essentially, my simple crumb coat is done. I've got to say that for some reason, you could also apply just a thin layer and then come back. I tend to skip that all completely because I just need to save a bit of time. But conveniently, this is what crumb coat looks like. You can see it's unpolished. It has bits on it. The cake has come through. It looks spotty. I have pockets here that are unfilled. It's completely fine. The goal is to kind of keep the crumbs together, and I have achieved that. So I'm going to go leave this cake to set in the fridge, and then I'll come and clean up. We'll take some questions, and then we'll proceed with the next phase of the decorating process. Right, there's a few of you in the chat. I couldn't access the chat earlier, so it was hard to kind of see. Oh, Leonie, all of you in the chat. Oh, wow. Jackie, I think, Jackie, you asked me a question earlier in some of my comments, under some of my videos. I remember you were asking me some questions about ganache, right? So yes, if Jackie, if you can leave, I was going to come back later and answer those questions for you in the, under those posts that you left me. But if you want to leave your questions here, I will answer them for you. Oh, thank you for all of you who are complimenting the cake. Thank you very much. Oh, Jackie, it's okay. And do you put a cake board between the layer, since it's what you call a double barrel cake? Okay, so Jackie is asking about double barrel cake. Jackie, are you still here with me? So let me just answer this question for anyone who is trying to understand double barrel cakes. Double barrel cakes are cakes that are taller than your regular cakes. Essentially, they are a double portion in height of your regular cakes that should naturally stand between 4 to 5 inches high. I don't know what that is in the other centimeters or millimeters or something, but the inches is about 5. Let me just show you that. So 4 to 5 centimeters is about this height over here, from here going down there. And as you can see, the cake I just crumb coated stands nearly at 10 inches high. So that's about as double the height, and that is what you call a double barrel cake. When the cake comes back, I will probably be able to use that to demonstrate and explain things a little better. But if you follow me on the explanation I am giving you, a double barrel cake is sometimes a little difficult to cover because of structural issues. Because the more layers you have, the more difficult it is to keep the cake together. Sometimes the cake is shifting and sliding. So perhaps it's I would say it's good practice that you adapt or adopt measures that will stop that from happening. Mind you, when also building cakes, it's not just the layers that you're towering over each other. There's also weight and gravity working against you. So the more layers that goes above the cake, the more the weight comes down over the bottom parts. So naturally, sometimes you have to employ measures to kind of offset these issues and mitigate them. And a known practice is for you to dowel the cake. Doweling is when you put structure structures in your cake to offset the height of the towering layers coming in, which means the height that would naturally set on the layers below are kind of broken and taken over by structures which are heavier and lifts the weight over the cake. That's about like engineering in cakes, something in common there. And sometimes when you put the structures in the cake, you also put a cake card in between to separate the layers, but also serves as a surface so that when the cake is being cut into, it is easier to separate the cakes. I hope that kind of explanation makes sense in terms of how double barrel cakes are structured or layered. If you go back after this video to, I think I have a video here on my channel, which is it's a cake. I can't remember the title, but I'll describe the cake so that when you go to the long form video, you can see. It's a yellow cake with an acrylic face with pink flowers, I think. The thumbnail shows an 11-inch tall. It's a double barrel cake plus extra height. I go through the exact process of layering that cake, breaking the height and doweling it for you to see. So that should give you a visual process of how doweling a double barrel cake looks like, as I've just explained. But for this cake, even though it stands double the height, I didn't break it and I didn't put structures in with a card. The simple reason being sometimes the weight of the layers will determine how you layer this cake. You may have a taller cake that is made out of lighter layers of cakes. So for instance, if I was doweling let's say a cake, a chocolate, like a chocolate mud cake standing at say 9 inches tall, I was definitely going to put structures in and also put a cake card. For this cake, we're looking at small layers, I think less than an inch in thickness of vanilla cake. It's a lighter sponge. I really didn't bother to do all of the drama with the structuring. But if you're a beginner, I will recommend you adopt best practices for great results. Whatever corners I cut, understand that I mitigate that because I come with a bit of experience for doing this over nearly a decade of cake decorating. So I would like to probably say I probably understand my own methods and also understand where my shortfalls are. And because of my own experience, I am able to understand where I can risk a particular thing and where I have to obviously adapt the essential methods to get great results. So that's a long-winded way of saying, Jackie, I didn't put structures in this cake at all, just a dowel to hold the layers together, but I didn't put a cake board in at all. Having said that though, different cakes will require different method. And for this cake, what I did differently is I didn't, after layering the cakes, I put the cake completely in the fridge to set. First of all, the layers themselves, before I layered the cake, okay, so I'll talk you through the pre-decorative process just so that you have some sort of understanding. What I did with this cake was that after baking it, I baked it last night, actually so late last night. It was past midnight when I baked the cakes. Was it? Yes, past midnight. So it's only a couple of hours, so it's still a freshly baked cake. You would always want your cake to stay at countertop for maybe 24 to 48 hours. When necessary, you can freeze it and then bring it back to thaw. There is a whole science and understanding of why that is necessary to enhance moisture, amongst other things. I've spoken about that on the channel, so if I will link some of those resources in the description below at the end of this video. But with that in mind, when I made this cake, knowing that I am building it from a freshly sort of baked cake, because the 24-hour cycle I didn't have time to make the 24-hour cycle. What I did was that I wrapped the cake in cling film, left it on the countertop for the couple of hours that it was baked after. I think I give or take, I had about 12 hours in between, if you like. And so this evening, what I did was once I leveled and torted the cake into layers, I arranged them put them on a cake board and then left them in the fridge so that they set cool. I wasn't looking to freeze them or refrigerate them completely to hard rock status. All I was looking to do is chill the layers so that they don't shift and slide on me, because the buttercream I was using was on the softer side, which is salted caramel, French buttercream. So as a result, I needed the layers to chill. The advantage of that is when you come to layering the cakes, when you set your layers of cakes over the buttercream, because the cake layers are slightly chill on the surface, they are a little more solid and they hold on to the buttercream well, which naturally stops the cake from shifting and sliding. So that's a tip for you to undertake if you want to. So doing that, I layered, I think, about 3 cakes, and then I saw that it was beginning to shift. So I put it back in the fridge to set completely. Then I came back to do the other 3, and then I set a dowel in the middle to hold the layers together, and then set it back in the fridge completely to chill. And then when it was solid on the outside, I came back and I trimmed the cake and then left it back again to chill. If you're wondering how much chilling time you need, give or take maybe 15 to 20 minutes, depending on the efficiency of your fridge. That should give you some results over there. So that is sort of the decorative planning and processes before we got to what the cake you are seeing. But if you check my long form content, you would see processes that has seen me do this completely. I think most of my decorated cakes in long form edited videos are actually starting from where I trim the cakes, layer them, and I have so many videos that take you through the entire process. So I'll encourage you to check that out. Jackie is asking, do you put a cake board between the layers since it's what? Yeah. So Jackie, I have just answered that question for you. Yeah. And okay, right. Oh, yeah. Jackie was asking me about where I pick my ganache plates. I believe it's Cake Craft Company. I remember I normally get that confused myself. The only reason I remember it is because when I was doing that particular tutorial, somebody asked and I had to go and check, and I answered the question, answered them in a community post. So it's Cake Craft Company. Jackie just wanted to know where I pick up my ganache discs. I have used some ganache discs for cake decorating in recent times, and those lives are already here. So I just answered that question for her. In the meantime, I hope some of your cake questions are answered. Parkat, welcome to the chat. And to all of you who are in the chat, hello and thank you. It's always a pleasure when I show up on the live and you all are here supporting me. So you can show a bit of support to the live chat by clicking on, if you're watching this on your phone, on the top right, there are 3 dots over there. If you tap on the dot, it should show you a series of icons, one of which is the thumbs up. Just like the video, and if you like the video, it tells YouTube that you have enjoyed the video, and it's likely to put that in front of some bakers or cake decorators who might find this video useful. On top of that, if you haven't subscribed, what are you doing? Consider joining us here. We are a supportive bunch here, and the videos are intentionally made as educational cake decorating resources so that you can tap in, get yourself some handy tips. We don't cut corners here. We start from a process and then we finish and you get to see me. In fact, I have baked cakes here, and whether they are failing or I'm getting great results, you are seeing them in real time. And so are the decorating processes that I undertake a cake decorating class. This may as well be a paid webinar where you're taking a class to learn how to decorate a cake, but you get that for next to nothing, and all you can do is support the channel by hitting the like button and also subscribing so that we know that you are having a great time here. So for all of you in the chat, the new people, all of you there, Parkat, hello there my darling, how are you? And yes, Miguel, I am having a great time. And Ruxolin, hello, all of you. If I said I was going to call names, we will never be done over here. We still have a cake that is chilling. When a cake is chilling in the fridge, we want to be very careful because we don't want to over chill it, because then it will cause cracks in the cake. So I'm going to go ahead and bring the ganache back to a consistency that will be healthy for use. And then we're going to get our cake back and we can do the second coating, and then after which, when the cake is chilling, I'll take some more questions, and then we will be talking through the decorative techniques we'll be undertaking, why that is, and how that can be made easy for you. So welcome to the stream again, and if you're watching this on replay, thank you for being here, and I hope you find some value in this video. So the ganache that we use for crumb coating the cake, I'm just going to put it in the microwave 5 to 10 seconds. When you are kind of heating ganache, you want to be extremely careful. But the ganache ratio here is 3 to 1. It's white chocolate ganache and cream. I'll leave all the details in the description box. And if you check on other videos, which I'll be linking down in the description box below after the end of the class, you will find some information regarding the use of this ganache. Our cake is back, and as you can see, it has set solid. Now what I want to do is take off the excess ganache on the top of the cake. And this is a good tip for how to achieve sharp edges on a cake, because by trimming it, you are essentially creating a cleaner, finer top with sharp edges here. But that is a little tip for you over there. I am going to take off this. And whilst that is happening, I might as well boil the kettle because I will need the hot water. Right, we're talking ganache coloring. So Parkat is asking, you can't use regular food coloring to white chocolate ganache, right? What do you mean? There are different brands of food coloring. Obviously, there are liquid-based ones which doesn't mix well with white chocolate ganache. Ideally, you want to get a gel food coloring color base, or you want to get an oil base, which is the best for this in terms of ganache use. But yeah, if you, the brand I prefer in this case is Color Mill. So Color Mill is what I am using. So our cake has now been left slightly half polished. So what I am going to do is spread the next amount of ganache on it, and then spread it all the way. If you observe that the ganache is not completely colored, as in if the color is not uniform, that is intentional. I left it, I wanted the pink to be a streak effect so that you have blobs of pink running through. If you go to the community post of the post that I said I was going to be making this design, you will see the result over there, as in the cake I am looking to recreate. And you will find that it's not exactly a completely pink cake. It has streaks of pink color in there, and that is the effect I am going for. So I have just dipped some more color in here, and what I'm going to do is spread that evenly around the cake. I can also do this, as you can see, there is more pink color on the base, and that is what I really wanted to achieve. Right. A good tip for working with ganache or buttercream is that you want to make sure you have enough so you don't run out. Clearly, I didn't gauge the amount I needed, so I'm just trying to warm my scraper here by running some water over it, and I'm going to wipe that clean. And with the warm scraper, see how easy that will clean the ganache. Right. I've actually ended up picking up things that I don't need. Right, there you go. Mind you, the worktop on which I am working It's not completely straight. So if you see that the cake looks wonky, it's not the cake, it's because my worktop here has slanted, which is why the cake may look that way. But there you go. So I'm just taking the excess ganache off. And like I've said earlier, a good tip for working with ganache is just ensuring that your tools are warm. So you have a warm blade. Normally, I would have a sort of tray of warm water on the side, and then I would just dip this in. But I have, my trays are used for my excess cake scraps. I ended up having too many cake scraps from my last cake decoration, and all my cake trays I used up. So as a result, I just had to find a way. So as you can see, the streaks of color are on the base, and that is intentional. And the top has a lighter coating of the color. And what I'm going to do now is just go back in and fill the spots that has there you go. I'm just filling those up, and with right. So it's important that your tools are warm, because that is what will aid a clean look to your cake. So as you can see, if my scraper wasn't warm, all it would do is just drag the ganache along and leave unpolished look to the cake. So as you can see, the cake is coming along just fine. Now, I am not too worried about imperfections that may show up on the cake. And that is because we are going to apply some stencil detailing, and then apply some gold highlights to that, which will cover some aspects of the cake surface. Now, ideally, I would want a perfectly polished looking cake, but sometimes certain techniques will aid getting away with some imperfections that may appear on your cake. But as you can see, my goal is to show you how to do this correctly. And so that is what we are doing. So at every point when the cake is used, you scrape the cake, you want to make sure that you take off the excess and you're starting off with a clean scraper. That will help your results. There you go. So I'm just doing this now in stages, as you can see. Scrape that off and then go back in. Wipe all that down, just so that you don't transfer water or fluids back on the cake. Then there you go. What a warm scraper also does is it melts away any roughness or rough appearances on the cake. So essentially, can you see the cake is almost done? Like, I wouldn't, if I wanted this to be cleanly polished, then I will probably just go in here. So just for your benefit, I'm going to do just that so that we can polish it and get the cake cleanly polished. So we know the task of having a polished ganache cake is completed. And if you're in the chat and you have more questions, just leave them for me and I will answer them. I can see Parkat saying the cake looks amazing already. Thank you, lovely. Right, there you go. There you go. At this point, the ganache has set, because when you get the cake out of the fridge and it comes out, it is completely chilled. So if you apply any ganache on it, it sets rather quickly. So as you can see, yep. And all I want to do now is ensure that I don't have ganache lines left on the cake. And there you go. So I don't have any ganache lines. If you squint, I'm sure you will see some fine ganache lines, which in this case, I'm not completely worried about. The simple reason is the cake is going to be covered by some stencil details, some parts of the cake. So there you have it. Right, now the top of the cake I'm going to leave to set completely, and then I'll trim it to reveal a polished cake. And just like that, we are closer to finishing our cake. So I'll leave this in the fridge to set, and then I'll come back, take more questions, and then we'll prep for the transition to the next phase, which in this case will be adding the stencil detail, well, polishing the top of the cake, doing the stencil detailing, and other aspects of the cake. So I'm going to move quickly out of the chat and leave this in the now whilst the cake is chilling. For the decorative aspects of the cake will include the use of stencil detail, some gold painting. I will come to that in a moment. I'll show you all of that. We have some edible gold, and we have rejuvenated fluids, which will be used for the painting, as well as a brush. Well, yes, a brush that will assist with that effort. The cake is going to be displayed on a fondant covered board here, which is what I have gone ahead and covered. And I'm just dusting off any excess cornstarch. We would be able to also cover the trim of this cake board with ribbon, and you will see me do that. So I am just polishing this off quickly whilst it's to get, so when I say fondant covered, this is fondant, but to harden the surface so that you don't leave dents and make leave it soft looking, because you need the fondant to be hard so that the surface is solid for the cake to display on it. Otherwise, if it's just freshly soft fondant, it won't work. If you press on it, you will leave dents, and then you can't even handle the board without denting the cake surface. So a quick tip here is that I added some Tylose, which is CMC powder, to the fondant. There's no exact measurements to it, but perhaps for every 200 grams or 250 grams, you're looking at a full tablespoonful of gum Tylose powder, and that is quite a lot, but that should give you a gauge of how much you need so that it sets. CMC or Tylose is a hardening agent that hardens the fondant and helps it set. Now, if you don't have time, normally when you add the fondant to Tylose and then cover the board, you want to make sure that you leave the board somewhere for a couple of hours to maybe a day so that it sets and dries. A good tip, if you don't have time, is once it's covered, you can put it in your oven. For me, it's a convection fan oven. So at 50 degrees C, for maybe 15 to 20 minutes, take it out to cool, and you are completely done. I've seen people try to do the same things to dry models by putting the models in a microwave. Unfortunately, because we have the foil here, it's a fire risk to put that in a microwave. And I find that putting it in a microwave, you can't really control the time and how easy the heat will spread over this for you. So I just prefer to have it drying in an a fan assisted oven. So 50 degrees C. Sometimes you can even lower it to maybe 30 and just leave the fan at cooling temperature, and it will dry it out. Obviously, you will need a longer time. So that is how I derived the board over there, if you would like to know. The next thing is obviously the flowers I am going to be using. I'm going to be using the flowers to top the cake, and you will see me do that. These are artificial flowers that I picked up from my local store, and I will show you how I use that. A good way to probably make them food safe is that I take out the stalk, the metal stalk, by snipping all of those out and replacing those with a toothpick. I'll show you how I do this safely into the cake so that you can take them out without these affecting how the cake is decorated, and also keeping them food safe. To probably prep them, you can spray a bit of vinegar. I have a bottle of vinegar that is a little away from me now, but you spritz that over it and then leave it also at a fan assisted oven for 50 degrees for another 20 minutes, so that you know that it's like sanitized for you before they go on the cake, and then it's food safe as well. So that is a good tip. Of course, if we were using fresh flowers, the prep would have been completely different. But this is a quick way for you to get best result from decorating your cake without the fear of other technical measures that may be a little bit intimidating for you, especially if you are a beginner. And between the flowers, the cake board is also a simple decorative topper here that says happy birthday. So by the time we come to using that, you will see all of that. But I thought I will introduce that whilst we are still at it. And I think we have had enough time for the cake to be in the fridge because the cake is almost already set. I don't want to waste too much time, so I'm gonna go check on the cake and bring it back, and then we can move on to the next part of the decorating phase. People, the cake is back and we are going to trim the top. But yes, Parkat has just started baking. She bakes as a hobby, I think she says. And you want to open a bakery. Oh, wow. Well, that's something to aspire to, and I'm sure it's achievable. It's a long way, but if you keep at it, it's something you can definitely achieve. I once upon a time wanted a bakery, and I'm not sure now I want to. But never say never. There's always a good time for you to try something else. So if you wonder what I'm doing, I am just trimming the top of the cake to reveal sharp edges on the cake. That's all I'm doing here. See? So, and to be able to get that, you want to use a sharp knife. Oh, is it hyper aura? Hyper aura. Okay, so there's hyper aura in the chat who has the same aspirations as Parkat. And if you've just joined the chat, hello there. We are trying to decorate a beautifully presented cake over here. And all I've done is cover the cake in ganache, streaks of pink up until this point. Okay? So I probably never said that if you ever wanted a private cake class, you can check the website and send me information via the contact card. The contact card is optimized for, or the contact page is optimized for a cake buyer. But if you want say a virtual class or something, or want to take my brain, or so a one-on-one time to ask about your cake decorating questions and stuff like that, you can send me an email on my contact cards via my website, which is linked on the homepage. So that is just something to know. I don't think I have said that. I say that often, and sometimes I get questions about it. So that is for your convenience over there. So essentially, we are trying to get a sharp edge, and that's it. Sharp edges on the cake top, and little by little. When you start this process, you just want to know when to stop, right? Because if you don't stop, you will keep going, and then you will end up ruining the cake. And if you see me turning my back, it's only because I'm just trying to dip that in some warm water, because to get this right, you need warm water. And that's essentially all I'm doing. Now, our cake looks all polished and done. And with this consistency, or the look to the cake, we want to go ahead and polish the cake up with the stencil detail. Now, the stencil detail is only for a particular aspect of the cake, which is somewhere on the side. What I've done is I've just put the yarn on it just so that it holds the cake together. Other people would use a masking tape or a tape of some form or even a ribbon, right? So just make sure that a few tips for stenciling if you are undertaking stenciling on a cake, just make sure that your cake surface is solid. And with the solid, let me just get the consistency of this ganache right before I have problems. Right. Hello there. There's Chantilly, Katie Ann. Hi, darling. How are you? And Temi, I think Temi was you've asked me a few questions on some of my videos, I suppose. I will answer them. I didn't ignore you at all, unless you are a different person. But yes, how do I store my decorated cakes? I actually keep them refrigerated. In the winter, I will leave them on a countertop, but I keep them refrigerated. But I guess there is supposed to be a lengthy explanation to that I'll give you in a moment, because I know there is a lot of chatter about why you should refrigerate and why you shouldn't. And some of the reasoning falls under food safety guidelines and all of that. I refrigerate them, but I have also said that my method may not be the same for everybody, and that is simply because I have an exclusively two dedicated fridges that are for decorating, and they are set for cake tasks alone, so I can regulate the temperatures to suit what I need it for. Whereas if you have a home fridge that is only limited to like safe temperatures, where you can't really regulate it because you have other elements or other food, or if it's a fridge, like a household fridge, then managing the temperature can be slightly different to suit your needs. But anyway, I'll answer that in a moment. But if you wonder what I'm doing right now, I have just added some rejuvenated fluids to edible gold luster dust here to form a sort of paint. And all I've done is mix it all together here, as you can see, to form, it shouldn't be so liquidy, right? But it also shouldn't be too thick. You sort of have like a murky look to it. That's the consistency you want. You could do this with a larger paint brush, but I broke my bigger brush, so I'm having to do this with a smaller paint brush. And all I'm doing is I'm brushing into the space in here, and that is because I have applied the stencil to the cake using Ganache, and the detail should be there. I must say that sometimes I have got it wrong, because this particular stencil has a gap in it and I can't seem to get it to settle nicely on the cake for me. So that has been a little bit difficult to manage sometimes, but hey, over here we show our mistakes. So let's see if we are going to get it right this time, right? And like I said, a good tip is to make sure that the surface of your cake is set solid. And you want to make sure that the ganache, the stencil is set in place. But like I said, this ganache, this stencil is slightly problematic for me. So let's see if I got that right. Okay. Right. So it's not completely polished as I would have liked it, because you can see the gold has seeped through and has created slight mess here. But I'm not mad about it. Okay. I am not mad, because the stencil that we are using comes inherently with that problem, which is annoying for me sometimes. And it's not the entire cake that needs stenciling. It's only a section of it, like a quarter of it. So that the stenciling of the cake is this part, which is done, right? So with that said, so a little bit of information to help you. If you are creating a stencil at this point, if you're covering the entire cake, that is, some stencils come with a start point and an end point. and the stencils are cut in such a way that you can have an overlap that leaves you with a seamless transition from the end point to the next starting point. So look out for that if you have those stencils. This particular stencil, is it Caking It, the brand? I don't like it very much, honestly. That was Caking It. But there's a different brand that I will leave links in the description box. Oh, I can't remember what the brand. It's a very popular brand. Slightly caking it up is slightly expensive, and I really didn't like them. The texture of the stencil isn't great. Like, I want a bit of flexibility and fine coverage, and this hard, so it doesn't cover the surface. And I personally had the trouble of the knot on the ends of it, which left a little gap. So I'm just trying to explain to you what may have caused my problems. But I've done this cake time and again, and that stencil is a hit and miss. So as you can see, we have seen the stencil seep a little bit out here, but that is completely fine. Those are some of the stencil mistakes you can have when you are stenciling a cake. So bear that in mind. So I was saying, if you are going to cover your cake completely in stencil, look out for the stencils that are labeled from the start to the end so that you can get an overlap that is seamless. So it's not, you don't have gaps, or it doesn't look like it's been stenciled sparingly, if you like. But more than anything, when you stencil one aspect, it's there are brands of stencils on the market now that can give you a full coverage to a cake and are wider. But if you have a stencil that will not give you a full single wrap coverage and you have to do it in sections, make sure that after one stage, leave the cake to completely chill to set the side of the stenciling before you come back to continue. Also, in this case, for this stencil, you would have had to wash the stencil altogether, wipe it clean before you even try to use it again. So those are some top tips for getting your stencil right on a cake. And a good tip, if you're not sure about the surface of your cake, sometimes when you have moisture on the cake, it's a no-no to start stenciling. You might get away with dabbing it, but let the condensation that has set on the cake completely evaporate before you start stenciling. Because when you have moisture on the surface, it means the cake has some moisture on it. And if you touch it, you can leave a dent. So with that, if you apply a stencil, it is going to just rub off on the moisture, and it doesn't allow a cleaner surface for the stencil to settle on. So those are some top tips for stenciling the cake. But be sure to make sure that your surface is also set and solid, because sometimes the temperature of the stencil, if say you've washed it under warm water and it's warm, the moment it comes into contact with the cake, it will begin to melt off the surface of the cake. So those are some top tips for stenciling. I'm going to leave this cake to set, and then we'll come back and do the board with the ribbon, and we can transfer the cake to a board surface, and then we can start the decorating, and you will see that. So our cake is chilling. We are going to work on the board surface and before the cake comes back. So I have another cake board here, and then over that I am going to put the cake board. For every cake board on which the cake is going to display, there is a front and a back, and you can choose that. For me, it's rather easy because the foil covering for the board ends here, so there's sort of a seam at the back. So I'm going to use that as my guide. I am also going to employ a pink ribbon, which is what is going to go on the back of the cake. And before we do the ribbon, I am going to apply a simple glue. This is kids glue, if you like. In the past I have used double tape, and double tape also double-sided tape, but you almost have to get the same width of the double-sided cake to cover the base of the board, and that can be a little bit tricky. But my local hobbycraft has that. Jackie, would you consider a bake decorator along? Oh yes, I think essentially this decorating task that I undertake on a live is sort of, it's not the bake along, if you like, but yes, I would like to undertake a bake along challenge with all of you. So look, if you're up for a bake along, leave a thumbs up in the chat, and then I will have a look at it and align it with my schedule, and we can continue the subject in the community post, and then we can agree on that. I think this will be good for any complete beginner who actually wants to undertake baking. So yes, if you would like to undertake a bake along, we need, how many people are in the chat? I think to make it if we have up to about 6 to 8 people per time, because I want to make it useful for all of you so that I can also interact with each one of you if we're doing the bake along. Maybe when we transition the chat to the community post, we can determine how that can happen, whether it's going to be an online virtual bake along like a Zoom class, or we will form a members only. Who will be up for a members only chat here? Because you know what? I know at some point you are going to have to have me pick, you know what? As long as possible, I want to make sure that the resources are available for you. But some of these will require some commitment and time for me. At the moment, just being transparent with you, at the moment, everything I do on YouTube, I don't get a penny out of it. If you look at the numbers, I am quite a fairly small channel. There is hopes for us to grow. I am not mad about that. I'm completely patient about it. But it also means it takes a lot of time to be here, and it's exactly 11:56. It's almost midnight UK time, and I'm stood in a kitchen teaching a class about cakes, as in a live class, a cake decorating tutorial. I'm not complaining. I'm just giving you context that to be able to undertake extra tasks, it will require a certain level of commitment and time from me, which at the moment I may not be able to give unless there is some sort of like compensation or arrangement for it. Do you see what I mean? So I have intentionally, if you've watched the channel, I have intentionally not activated membership monetization options for myself. And that is simply because I just want you to enjoy what I do for as long as possible. But I've also thought about a lot of cake questions. If you've been here for a long time, you will know, right? Those of you who have been riding with me since day one, you will know that when we started these live series, I wanted to take reviews. Like I wanted to start with, say, a cake product and then review it. So we started with the flour, where I took one recipe and then changed different sorts of flour and adapted different skills. And then we ended up with so much to learn from. All of those videos are on here. But along the way, I had so much request, and then we thought we'll pivot, and then you will pick a recipe and I will come and bake, right? And we started that. We did the pineapple upside down. Amanda, our moderators recommendation, and we made a few different cakes, and then I received a lot of overwhelming questions and support. And I realized that much of the support and questions were coming from people who really wanted to know about decorating cakes instead of the recipes, right? So I was forced to kind of move and serve the needs for which I am in demand for. And that is because whilst I run the channel, I do this for you. So if you have a specific question you need me to answer, I come and I answer it by undertaking a task just to answer the question for you. Does that make sense? So because of that, at the moment, let me just give you a context of what my diary and my days of caking activities look like. Between coming here to create a class or making these live tutorials, I also have to bake customer cakes. That is the least of my problems because I can control that. I can take a cake order, I can completely refuse it. But for every cake order I refuse just to make time to create content, it's a loss for me because at the moment I don't make any money from the channel, right? So that's a lot. But I don't just come here to create a class. If you find the videos informative and very information centered, that is intentional because it's not just my skill that I bring research and having to learn myself and be able to come and give you useful information. So it's almost like I am having to learn a lot so I can come and give you valuable information. So I am deriving recipes. So when I take a particular recipe and we are nerding on it, that is because I have baked that recipe probably 3 to 4 times and I've taken recipe notes. So my day about cakes is not just about making cakes for people. I am also trying to find answers to the science of baking, understanding baking processes, and also taking these classes whilst also creating long form content. And if you've checked on the long form content, since the live tutorials took off, the long form content have slowed down because I can't do it all. So I say all of that to say I want to do more for you, but there's only so much time I can have to do things just because I want to give it to you for free. So here is a suggestion. I don't know if I'll go through with it completely, but if you want me to activate the members only, then you get to you become a producer essentially. You get to determine the tasks that you want me to answer. So if it's a bake along, we can take a bake and then we all bake along, and I will give you all the information, including the extra things you need to set yourself up. And then you can get extra perks out of it. If you want us to delve into buttercream series, we can do all of that. So let me know what you want and I will think about it. All right. That said, our board is covered and I'm going to put a pin to secure the board here. And that is our cake board done. With that done, I know our cake should be ready now. So I am going to go back and get the cake quickly. And then we can get that transferred. But right, our cake is back. And if you're new here, we decorated this cake live on here. The cake itself started as a cake that was filled and stacked together, and we had trimmed it before starting the decorating process. So I'm just going to try and just clean the top of the cake quickly because I can see some right. There you have it. Now, if you have a cake like this, you are going to have to be very careful with the way you transfer it. Because under this is a cake card over which the layers of cake are set. But before we do anything, let's move the board into shot. Now, you are facing me, so I'm going to have to turn the back of the cake to you. And the only way I know it's the back is because we have the ribbon that is secured over there. We've secured there, right? So I am going to apply some ganache first over the surface. So for those of you who want the bake along, I can see your responses there. We'll continue the chat in the community post later, and then we'll make a decision about it, because it also means that I have to commit to making the time. So let's see. It's a collaborative effort. Now that is a warm knife. I'm going to slide this knife under the cake, and all I'm doing is allowing the heat on the knife to lift the cake up easily for me. Now, if you want to do this right, when you've slid the knife under, you can lift it off, as you can see. Yeah. But if you're a beginner, please don't try this. And if the cake is a bigger cake, please don't try this. it's likely to fall off. But this is simply because it's a smaller cake, so I can get away with doing that. And I've moved it out of the way. So with that done, the cake is moved, but we have a slight problem. The good thing about these lives are that because you get to see my decorating process in detail, you also get to see the imperfections and the troubles that I am likely to face in real time when decorating these cakes. So as you can see, when I slid the knife under there, I wasn't very careful and I dragged the knife out. So what it has done is it has ended up splattering some ganache on the cake surface, and the blob of ganache that I spread on over which the cake is sitting has now leaked out. How do we solve that problem? Okay, one thing you want to do is to do it carefully. Yeah, what I'm doing here is just trying to clean my what do you call it, scraper, because you will need a clean scraper, because what you don't want is to transfer any ganache or color residue onto your cake board. You really do not want that. So I am wiping everything clean, but I also want it to be warm. So I am just going to angle this and sweep that slightly over the cake. And just like that, I have taken the excess off. Right? You can do this with a knife also if you choose to anyway. So let's see if we can try with the knife. Okay. So with the leak over here, you can use a knife because ganache will lift easily anyway. So you see, I got rid of that. But I might also want the bottom of my cake to be seamless so that the gap between the board and the cake is covered. So this is where using a sharp scraper is helpful. By just running the scraper underneath the cake, you have the cake sitting pretty over there. And essentially, the task of wanting to get a cleanly looking cake is achieved. What do you think? Did you find the process easier, or what would you have loved as an improvement of this? Let's see. If you were to undertake this cake, exact cake decorating at home, do you think you would be confident to achieve great results? Right? So that is our cake all set and done. And that is it. Now, we are moving to the decorations that we are going to add to this cake. Now, for the decorations, I know I want a selection of flowers on the side of the cake. It all right. I'm just looking at some questions so I can answer them for you. Oh, okay. No. Okay, so right, we were talking about the cake layers. The reason why I didn't dowel the cake, when I was speaking to Jackie earlier, Jackie's question, about the cake layers and why I didn't dowel them, it was because I did say the cake layers were slightly lighter. So yes, the knife could lift up the cake because it's not a heavy cake. Plus, I also had the added advantage of, I've spoken time and again over here by saying that you want to be very careful about some of the cake practices that are adopted by other cake makers. Now, I say that by also saying one particular way of doing things is not better than the other, and one is not wrong or it's not a good right or wrong situation here, right? So if you see another cake maker or decorator doing something completely different, respect their efforts. But here's something to know. You also have to understand the intention behind the methods they employ for their results, right? I have seen cake decorating tutorials where the decorator starts by layering the cake on the board surface, and the same board surface will eventually become the display surface. In that case, I haven't seen them use a fondant covered board. And the reason being, if you're going to be displaying your cake right on the surface on which it's decorated, you don't want to use fondant because then you will mess it. You want to use a sort of medium, a board made of material that can wipe easily. In which case, I have seen people just use the bare foil covered board, which is not covered with anything, just the foil. And sometimes the color of the foil cover complements the cake. I find that looks slightly unpolished. It's a case of preference. So I'm not having a go. I'm just saying what is attractive to me and what is aesthetically pleasing. Because if you're an artist and you value what you do, different things make sense to you aesthetically. So not everything will be appealing to you. So having said that, if if you find a decorator who decorates, who is displaying the cake, because you just saw me transfer the cake from my work surface to my display surface. So I'm using two different techniques here. Whereas some cake decorators will decorate on the board on which they will display on the board on which they are decorating. So for instance, if I picked this board and I chose to set my cake on, when I finish, I'm using Ganache discs here. So I wipe it and that's it. I'm not transferring the cake from one surface to the other. Having said that, if you are using that method, you'll find that some cake decorators then do not have a cake card to sit underneath the board surface and the cake. So the cake is sitting on the bare surface of the board, the display board for that matter. If you went for that option, if you're not transferring the cake, then yeah, it's really not a problem. But if you're transferring the cake like I did, imagine not having the cake card underneath. It means by putting the knife underneath, if I have a heavy set of layered cakes, it is towering down and it's exposing. You're likely to crack the bottom of the cake. So that's a long-winded way of saying, before you go employing a particular process because you've seen it on video, take some time to understand what the intention is behind the process, because to whoever is employing that process, the process may make sense to them. And if you don't understand it and you go and employ that process, it may not achieve you the results because you don't have the context of the intention for which they employ the process. I hope that makes sense to you. We have a vanilla cake here filled with salted caramel buttercream and salted caramel filling. So I say all of that to say, Jackie, thank you. Jackie was recommending that instead of using a knife, you want to lift your cake with a scraper because it has a wider surface area and might be able to contain the cake better. Listen to Jackie. Don't do what I'm doing. That said, I actually have a trowel that I use to lift my heavier cakes. Like I'm talking hardware building trowel, which has a very fine blade on the bottom. So it has a handle and it's sturdy. I just didn't employ it for this particular cake. So are you adding the buttercream? If you want to know, the buttercream that I was using is just what do you call it? Salted caramel, buttercream with salted caramel filling. The cake is covered in ganache. Now to the decorating of the cake, I guess I could be talking about cakes forever and be nerding out on it. But just to give you a bit of ideas about the decorating process I am employing here. The cake is set on the board now. Now in my hand is a small bit of fondant. This is hardened because it has CMC tylose in it. It doesn't really matter because it's the remnant of the fondant that was used for covering my cake board. But regular fondant should do. All you need is a small ball of fondant that you can roll. So you roll and create a small ball here. Now, what is this ball for? You'll find out very shortly, because what we're doing is we're employing beginner-friendly techniques to cover this cake and decorate it. With that said, I want the flowers to show up on this. I'm going to move out of shot slightly just so that I can talk you through here, because if I stay here in shot, it's going to be hard to describe what I need. I'm trying to show you here. So the part of the cake that I want the flowers to come over is on this side, right? So that's an angle that I'm looking at. So for that, I'm going to put a small ball of fondant here. Now, why do I need a small ball of fondant? For me, it's just preference, right? And that is because the flowers, where are the flowers? The flowers, which are our decorative items that are going on the cake, were bought from my local shop. I have given you tips on how to make them food safe and also to sanitize them for use, because normally when you pick these from hardware stores, they are very exposed. People have touched them and all of that. It is important that you consider all these measures so that you also employ safe ways to make sure that when they are added to the cake, you're presenting the best outcome in terms of hygiene, presentation, food safety to your customer. These are all considerations. So a good tip when you pick such flowers is these can be washed. You can wash them, but if you don't fancy that, you can spritz some vinegar on it. I have a bottle of vinegar mixed with water. I spray this on there, and then I dump them in the oven at a fan-assisted temperature of 50 degrees C. It won't melt. You need to keep an eye on it. Maybe 15, 20 minutes, half an hour max. Take them out and let them cool. Essentially, you've sanitized them. And if there are germs on it, they won't survive in the heat. And at least you are considering your customers' health and well-being in that way. With that said, these come with a foam core inner set. So I have also taken them from the metal stalk. The thing with metal stock is that you don't want metal to be in direct contact with the cake. Why is that? Because it's not food safe. The metal can rust, and sometimes the covering on the metal is not safe. You can wrap that in floral tape and different ways to make it safe. But I just want this to be convenient for you, whilst also adhering to the guidelines that will ensure your practices are food safe. With that said, I've taken the metal stock off and I have inserted toothpicks, just regular toothpicks. So that is where the ball comes into place. Because I am using toothpicks, I could easily insert these into the cake, but I'm also mindful. It's just a preference thing. So the ball serves as a barrier into which I can insert the cake. So the ball is held in place with a bit of ganache that will set over the cake, right? And that serves as a barrier. Additionally, it also serves as a lift for me, because if I were to put this flower straight onto the cake, it will be flat in terms of the way I want the flowers to appear. So the ball gives me a lift, as in a, what do you call it? The flower, there is flower foam. If I was arranging flowers like a florist, some florists will use floral foam filled with water, which will then help them as a medium to insert the cake. So I am using this essentially like a floral foam to help give me a lift, whilst also serving as a barrier into which I can insert the cake. And that is a long way of explaining all of that. That also gives me the option of inserting my leaves into the cake without having to worry about the leaves getting directly into the cake itself. And the added benefit of this is, if I don't like my floral arrangement, I can lift the ball off easily without having to poke into the cake. So it makes for convenience and also flexibility when decorating or arranging the flowers doesn't go to plan as you would like it. And I hope that sort of makes some sort of sense for you. For now, I need a toothpick. And what I'm going to do with the toothpick, first of all, is to create a hole into which a leaf is inserted. I will press on the fondant to hold the leaf in place. And that is first element in the cake. I'm going to do the same here. I'm going to press into the cake, create a hole. The leaf doesn't even have a stalk. Can you see? But because I can squish the fondant to close, it holds the leaf in place for me. This is better done if I was using soft fondant. Remember, I told you the fondant has tylose in it, so it's a little harder. But if you were doing it, I would recommend you use soft fondant. Now the arrangement is a white scented flower and surrounded by some pink flowers. So what I'm doing again is putting a hole in the fondant into which the green leaf goes, and then the same here. So essentially you make it completely beginner friendly. There is no fuss about it, and that is it. So that is my green base of flower set. Now I am going to put the white flower in there, and then there is a toothpick here. I'm lifting that. I'm putting a pink flower in here. Pick that. I've done this time and again, so I know the amount of flowers that I need. Maybe a selection of up to about 6 if I chose to, but otherwise there you have it here. And another toothpick here. And there you have it. Now, if you look at it from an angle, you might be able to see a gap there. So what I'll do is I will just insert a filler flower. I will insert a filler flower here. Yep. Essentially, that is our cake decorated, if you like. Now, what I want to do is highlight the green leaves with some edible gold. So the gold paint that went to stencil the cake, I am just painting that here. Right. We are just highlighting the green. Yep. Right. And with that done, another decorative element we want to put there is, because this is a birthday cake, we can stick the happy birthday somewhere in here. I've just picked a random place to insert it. Okay, that is missing a little bit, I think. Let's see if we can find. You obviously have to try a little bit and think about how you want this presented. But let's see. Yep. I think it's 2 way behind. The good thing is that the flowers covers a lot of places. So let's see. I want the happy birthday to be somewhere in front, a little more than it is. Right. I can't seem to find a place to place that. Somebody give me a better idea on how to stick this. Okay, let's see. Would you go for that? Let's see. Yeah, okay, right. Yep, I think I'll go for this. So happy birthday. And there you go. So that is our cake all done. Let's see if I can just There you go. Right. Our cake is all done now. Very easy, beginner friendly, and quite achievable. Do you think if you were to undertake this cake on your own, in your own time at home, do you believe you will be able to achieve these results? Let's see. Because I scraped that away, I have created a little gap here that needs covering. That's all. So that's what I'm doing. Thanks, Jackie. Thanks, Chantilly. I so appreciate all of you being here today with me. Right. That's all done now. Right. Yeah, that gap is covered. And yeah, we are done. Right. So that's our cake all done. What do you think?